Hi, my name is Jimmy Nix. I'd like you to come along with me. We're at beautiful Lake of the Pines in East Texas. Pine trees, dogwoods, a lot of wildlife. I'll tell you something else too. This is bass country. We're going to be fishing out at Willow Point Marina. We're going to be fishing in the upper part of Lake of the Pines. A lot of cover, a lot of bass. I'll tell you something about this. A lot of the pleasure that I derive out of bass fishing with a fly rod is being able to tie my own flies. I'd like to teach you to fish and tie some of these flies because I know how hard it was when I first started learning, get material on learning to tie bass flies. I tell you what, I've tied on a little bass bug. A little bass bug with rubber legs. There's an awful lot of pockets between my boat and that big stump over there. All kind of duckweed, all kind of cover in here. And these fish really ought to be thick in there. Let's see if they want to eat this bass bug. One of the important things is to be able to accurately cast that bug in those pockets. Just bounce it over and then let it slowly fish in that pocket. Let it sit there for a while. Just let it sit motionless. And then give it a little strip, just a little one. Let it sit there and sit there. And just a little strip. Sometimes you can get more action with a bass bug letting it sit than working it. Okay, let's pick that fly up. There he is. He's not very big, but we'll warm up on a little one. Let me slip down there and let him grow up. There you go, little fella. You know, now that I've taught you how to fish this bass bug, why don't you come into my fly tying room? I'd like to also teach you to tie it. Let's go. This is the deer hair bass bug. We're going to tie this fly on a 3366 Mustad. You can also use a 37-189. Our tail is going to be hackle off of a neck. We want to use wide webby hackle. Our skirt, we're going to palmer out of the same material. Our body is done completely out of deer hair. We have a natural deer hair, a black deer hair, and white deer fur for the face. We use white for the face almost on all colors because you're fishing this fly to you and you want to be sure and be able to see it. And the white is what you see. We're going to put rubber hackle in here for the legs. This is a standard bass fly. This fly is popularized by Dave Whitlock and Billy Munn. We owe a lot to them for doing this. Let's use a flat waxed single strand nylon floss to put our weed guard on. We'll lay a base of thread 1/3 down the hook bend and back up to the point on the hook shank that's opposite the point of the hook. We'll use 20-pound hard mason and we'll just capture the end of that, take 2 or 3 wraps, then we'll grab the monofilament, lift up on it, and tie back. This way it'll right itself under thread pressure right on top of the hook shank. And we'll come back to the tie-in point. Okay, I'll tie it off here with a whip finish. We'll change thread, either 6/0 or 3/0. For this fly we'll use black because we're going to use grizzly feather for the tail. This is an awfully good bass fly neck. It's wide, webby hackles, and the stems are not too stiff. We'll just choose 6 of these. And I don't worry about choosing them off this side because I can get them to flare out just by tying them on there correctly. We'll lay these feathers on our leg where the curve is down. I'll put them in 2 stacks, and we'll have 3 in each stack. I'll bring 1 stack up, and it's curved down. I'll turn it over and measure it on the other side. And I'll grasp all 6 of them. Now I've got the curve to each side. We'll measure them about 1.5 to 2 times the hook shank length. We'll just come in here and clip those stems right off. Now we're not going to strip the barbs off of this feather because that'll make it twist when we tie it in. Advance your thread about 1/8 of an inch. Now where we made our cut, just take a couple of wraps right around that stem and pull it up. We'll pull all 6 of them up at one time. Just pull it up, and as we pull it up, we're going to wrap the thread back. And what this will do is it'll write these right on top, real nice on top of the hook shank. And just cover your stems of your hackle with thread. And we'll take and we'll pull each 3 to each side. That way they'll splay out nicely. And just work them with your hands. Don't be afraid to pull on those feathers. If you don't like the way they are, just twist them and pull and get them where you want them. There's not one rule that says they have to be on there exactly like they're supposed to the first time. Let me show you these feathers. You got a nice splay tail now. You got 3 on each side, and they'll kick in the water like this. Let's put it back in the vise, and we'll put our skirt on. We'll select 2 more feathers for the skirt. Okay, for the skirt, we want to hackle these where the feather starts to bend. Now in this feather, there'll be a stiff portion right down here, and it doesn't hackle very well. So right where it bends, we'll snip that off right there. Okay, instead of stripping, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to snip those barbs off. We'll tie them in on the side. Okay, now we'll hackle forward. Let's put a little Flexament right there on that thread wrap. You can either use hackle pliers or you can do it in your hand. We'll just hackle forward, and every time you hackle forward, just pull back the previous hackle. Just grab the tips of that hackle. And just brush it back. Okay, and it gets in the right position. Hold it with the right hand. We'll tie it off with our left hand. Pull back just a little. Put a few thread wraps right there. We'll trim off that tip. And I'm going to take either a 6/0 or 3/0, and I'm going to tie it off right here with a whip finish. Because we got to get some thread on there that we can spin hair with. But first I want to show you a little trick. First thing we want to do is we want to get this little collar out of the way. Because all we do when we trim that hair, it really gets in our way. So take your 6/0 thread, grab the end of it. Also come in here and grab the end of that hackle that you've tied for the skirt. Take about 3 or 4 wraps around that. And right around here we'll do a whip finish. And we'll get all this stuff out of our way. And just trim it. Don't worry about that thread because we're going to come back later, trim it off, and let that skirt flare back out. Let's put a jam knot on with the thread that we can spin deer hair with. I use rod wrapping thread. It's a size A thread, and it keeps the same consistency as you spin the hair. You can also use size A monocord. We want to use a deer hair that kind of has a spongy feel. This way it'll spin real well. It's not really hollow. Everybody says you want hollow hair, but the hair itself is not hollow. It just has air spaces in it. This enables the hair to float. So what we'll do, we'll come up here and we'll trim the butts of the hair and trim the points completely off. We'll advance our thread about 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch. We'll cant our deer hair back, and we're going to put it on the near side of the hook. Take 2 loose wraps around the deer hair. As we pull down on the thread, we want to release the deer hair a little bit at a time. So here goes. Let's learn how to spin deer hair. Take another wrap through the hair, grasp it right over here, tighten. Pull back on the deer hair, wrap right in front of it. Take our hair packer and just push back. Be sure and support the back of the deer hair as you pack. Advance the thread. Let's put one more clump of deer hair on there. The same size. And this time we'll also trim the butts and the tips off. Cant it on the near side, take 2 loose wraps around, pull down and release the hair. Just let it spin right around that hook shank. Take a couple of wraps in front and pack that hair. Okay, right now we're going to put a rubber hackle on there. This rubber hackle comes all connected together, and you just peel off what you want one at a time. We'll just tie an overhand knot with the rubber hackle right around the hook shank. Tighten it, pull it back, and take a couple of wraps. Just kind of X around the hook shank, under the hook shank, and around the other rubber hackle. Pull back, take a wrap of thread in front of the rubber hackle, take your fingernail and just push it right back in there. Now grab the rubber hackle on the far side and pull it back into deer hair, all the way around to the near side. Take the near side rubber hackle, pull it back through the deer hair all the way on the far side. Advance your thread, and let's put another clump of deer hair on there. Again, we'll clean out the underfur. When you work with deer hair, you don't want to handle it very much. You want to grasp it where about half of the deer hair that you're going to spin on the hook shank sticks out from your thumb and your forefinger. That way you'll just trim the butts off, and then you come inside and snip the tips off. That way when you lay this on the hook shank, you have half of the deer hair sticking out, and so you can see what you're doing with the thread. Again, 2 wraps around, pull straight down and release the hair. Take one more wrap and then a wrap in front. Take your hair packer and we'll pack it again. Take a couple of wraps in front. Sometimes it's real nice just to take your bobbin, bring your thread all the way up close to the hook shank and just come right around there. That way you don't capture any hair. Again, we'll put another rubber hackle on there, an overhand knot right around the hook shank. Same procedure. We'll bring the thread over the rubber hackle and just kind of capture it around the hook shank. And then take one wrap of thread in front of the hackle, push it back in there, and again, the near side will go to the far side will come to the near side. All this doing is just keeping that rubber hackle out of your way. Advance your thread, 2 or 3 wraps, put another clump of deer hair on there. What we want to do now is just go about 2/3 of the way up with natural colored deer hair. And then we'll put some black hair in there, and then we'll put a face of white hair. 2 wraps around, pull straight down and let it spin. Pull back, take a couple of wraps. Okay, pack it. Sometimes when you take your packer, just bring it in here and twist it, and that really flattens that deer hair out nice. Wrap in front. Again, advance your thread. Okay, right now we're going to take some black deer hair. And this is just for looks. And you can tie bass flies in any color you want to. I like this natural bass fly. It's natural colors. Natural deer hair, black, and a white face. Again, we'll trim it off. We'll set it on here, a little canted position, 2 loose wraps. Pull straight down, let it pull right around the hook shank. Wrap in front, and we'll pack. Advance our thread. Let's put one more little clump of black hair on there. About half the size we did on the other one. Again, clean it out. Trim off our butts and our tips. And we'll can it in there on the near side. Take 2 loose wraps around it and spin that hair right around that hook shank. Pack it back. Take a couple of wraps in front and advance that thread. Okay, we're going to tie our face out of white. No matter what color I usually use white or some light colored deer hair on the front, because this is the part you see when you're fishing it towards you. Clean out the underfuzz again. Just grasp it one time with half of the hair sticking out between your thumb and forefinger. Trim it off. Lay it in there in a canted position. Bring it down, pull straight down, let it spin right around the hook shank. And we'll pack it back. Okay, we want to leave enough room for our head and monofilament weed guard to be tied off. So let's check it. Be sure we've got a nice white face, you bet. Put it back in the vise. Okay, now let's tie off this rod wrapping thread right now. Pull back, do a whip finish. Let's take the fly out of the vise and let me show you how to trim it. First thing we want to do is hold it upside down. Grab all the little rubber hackles and just kind of twist them together. Grasp the top of the fly by the deer hair. Take our razor blade and we'll want a perpendicular cut right on the bottom. This will be our flat cut. This will be our reference cut. And it's got to be perpendicular to the hook bend. Okay. And you want to get it deep enough where you've got a good gap between the hair and the hook point, but you don't want to get it so close to the hook that you cut the thread. Okay, after we get that nice flat cut, let me show you how that is. Got a nice flat cut. Now, that's our first reference point. Our second reference point, we're going to take our curved scissors. We're going to mark this. We want this bug to be symmetrical. So we'll come in here with our scissors and we'll just snip the width that we want. We'll come over here the same width and we'll snip right over here. And that way we got the same side. Now we're just going to cut in a curved direction right back to where our skirt was tied on. Okay, and we'll turn it over and we'll also do it on this side. And we'll keep that curve about the same. And we're going to turn that bug over and we're going to let it face us. We're going to bring our scissors right in here, and on each side we'll cut the face. Now this will enable us to trim this bass fly and have nice symmetry. Okay, we got our 3 reference points. We got our flat bottom. On each side we've got a nice symmetrical cut. Now you can pull the rubber down on each side. Always keep the rubber away from the hair that you want to trim. Just kind of twist it up. Okay, now with our scissors, we'll just go back. Same shape that we did when we started on the bottom. And we'll do that with scissors. And then we'll finish up with our razor blade. Okay, now remember, when we're cutting these flies, trimming these bugs, you don't want to cut too much off because it's very hard to put that hair back on. Blow excess hair off, and we'll come around with a razor blade and we'll trim this flat. The razor blade will take all those little rough edges out of here. And let me grasp that rubber band right there and twist it around a little bit, get it out of the way. Take a couple of rough edges off. Bring our scissors in here right next to the skirt. Just bring it up under here and cut that off. Where we have any stragglers there. And we'll fine tune it with a razor blade. You know, you can work on these just like a sculpture, I guess, forever. Better quit cutting on it, I won't have anything left. We'll pull the rubber hackle up and be sure they're all even. Okay, in the back two, I'm going to cut a little bit shorter, just about 1/8 of an inch shorter than the front 2 legs. Okay, I'm going to take my razor blade and I'm going to come right in here and I'm just going to cut this thread, just twack, just like that. And just like magic, that hackle's going to come back. And we'll tease it out. Okay, well also, let me turn that around and show you what happens. We'll pull the tail feathers out, tease that hackle out all the way around. Get that thread. And we've got a bass bug that's got a nice hackle skirt on there and none of it's been cut out. Okay, let's put our 3/0 thread on there and let's tie this weed guard off where we can go fishing. Pull that hair back, put a jam knot right in front, run that monofilament weed guard right up through that eye, pull the hair back, get it out of our way, take about 4 wraps around there. Adjust that weed guard where it's about 3/16 to 1/4 of an inch from the point. Bend that monofilament back and tie it down. Don't tie it down all the way to the hair. We want enough room to slip our scissors in there and just nip that right off. Take a couple of more wraps to secure it down. Whip finish. Cement that head with bug glaze. A nice, shiny, hard appearance. Okay, now this fly can be fished in many different colors. I mean, it's just varied, and it's just left up to your imagination. Bass like all colors. I can tell you this, on a dark, overcast days, they like dark flies. On a sunny, bright day, they like light flies. If I were you, I'd tie some in all different colors and always have them in my fly box. I guarantee you I do.